Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the Cinder mid-cycle. So we decided at the virtual PTG to have it in 2 sessions since we don't have to worry about facilities since we're doing it virtually. So we're going to do it this week just before the spec freeze and the milestone 2. And then we're going to do it again roughly a month from now just to sort of, do a final push to get things together. The Etherpad link is in the I tossed into IRC, I think. So yeah, but if you needed any links or anything at any point, just go ahead and shout out. Okay, and then let's see. I sort of know most people, but it'd be good to just go around, just say hello, who you are, what you're working on, and that'll be a good way to kick this thing off. So I'm Brian Rossmeda. I'm the Cinder PTL for this cycle. I work at Red Hat, and I work on Cinder a lot. So hello, everybody, and welcome to the meeting.
All right, I'll go next. My name is Walt Boring. I'm a Cinder core member. I work for SAP, and I've been working on Cinder for ages now. I do OS Brick and volume attachments and whatever else I can get my hands into.
Gorka, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Gorka. I work on Cinder, OS Break, and yeah, a little bit here and there.
And Cinderlib.
Yep, that as well.
Right. Okay.
And I work for Red Hat. I forgot about that.
Okay. Okay, Lucio. Am I saying your name correctly?
Lucio, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
My name is Lucio. I work for NetApp, and I maintain NetApp drivers for Cinder. And yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Then Fernando, you're also online, I think.
Hello, yeah. So I basically work for NetApp. I'm focused on certifier drivers, maintaining and adding features to it also. And this is it. Currently, I'm working on the active replication for the certifier driver. And maybe I could have some minutes to work with Gorka about it today. Not on this meeting, probably, but.
Okay, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, I know Gorka volunteered to help out with that, so yeah. we'll have to call him on it. And then Douglas, hi.
Hello, my name is Douglas. I'm work for NetApp with Lucio and Fernando.
Okay.
Currently, I'm working more with Manila, so I'm developing and bug fixing on Manila. So from time to time, I help them with the Cinder if needed.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. We had a good NetApp presence here today. Liang, you just want to say hi?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Liang. I'm from Intel, and I work for Cinder more than 1 year. But previously, I work on the Intel QAT project for about 4 years, and mainly I work on the Windows driver and the firmware driver for the QAT device. And before I participate Intel, I work on a Chinese company and works on the university apps. Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. Okay, and then somebody signed in as Joker.
Thank you.
Who is that?
Yeah, that's me. I work with Walter at SAP.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome. And I see Jay has joined us, so give him a few minutes to get set up as we're going. Jay, let me know if you need the links to the Etherpad or anything. And we are recording, by the way, although you should have gotten the message when you joined. So hopefully you're aware. Okay, thanks everybody. All right, let's get to the topics. If you slide down the Etherpad. Okay, so the Drop Python 2 community goal. I've got everything tracked on the Etherpad that's linked there. So you can open that up if you want to follow along. But basically, our situation now is all the Cinder components are no longer being tested under Python 2. And that's all I'll say about that. And they are being tested under Python 3.6 and 3.7, which wasn't the case previously. So previously they were tested under Python 3, but what exactly that was sort of depended on where they landed and what was available. So now we have it, they're explicitly, because we're supposed to support 3.6 and 3.7. Now the unit and functional tests for everything are doing both. So they're being checked in the gate and, well, checked in the check, and then I forget exactly what's probably in the gate also. So that's all good. Now, what's left is, so there's some controversy. So Nova broke everything like in October when they dropped Python 2 because they changed the setup config so that it required, you had to have at least Python 3.6 or it would not even install. So that's good from the standpoint of end users, I would think, who you want to make sure that they're not running something in an environment where it's never been tested. And then if they really want to do that, then they can hack it and do it, but we don't support that. But on the other hand, if we do that, then it does cause some problems as the transition's happening. So I'm not sure if we're going to do that or not. So if you have a strong opinion about it, let me know. It's not technically part of the community goal to force Python 3.6 or greater, although we'll see how things evolve because everything's supposed to be happening at milestone 2. And so I imagine there's going to be all sorts of breakages as, you know, things are running mixed. I don't know. Now, the other thing that came up, Eric noticed something on, we had a patch because we updated the Oslo VMware library that we use because there was a bug fix that we needed. But Eric pointed out, we also, right, and that release was cut out of master. So Eric pointed out, okay, so that's been tested under Python 3.6 and 3.7, at least I believe so. So we're going to have that situation with all our other libraries. So what I'm wondering, and I may have to ask Sean this later as the releases guru, I'm thinking, so milestone 2 is coming up. I want to do a Cinder release, even if there's not much in there, just so we have one that's out, that's Python 3.6 plus only, and then packagers can either ignore it or, you know, mess around to make sure that they know how to install this so that everything will work. But the other thing would be, I think maybe we should release, even if it's early, all our components so that every single component has a Python 3.6, 3.7 release that other projects can consume. But that's just my idea. I think that's would be good because I think we need to update all our lower constraints and stuff. So we can do it for like, so Python Cinder client needs Brick and the Cinder client extension. We can make sure that those are consuming the proper versions and raise the lower constraints. I don't know how we're going to do it with all the other libraries, to tell you the truth. But I think if we at least have a release that's supposed to be, you know, tested thoroughly on Python 3.6 and 3.7, then that'll be nice for everybody else. So I'll run that by Sean later. But that's
I have
the
a question
state.
for you.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but
No, go ahead.
if we're going to release all of our components that are going to be Python 3.6 and 3.7 only,
Yeah.
are we going to do a major version bump on those to prevent
Yes.
people?
Yeah, exactly. So it's supposed to be a major version bump on everything. So the number's
Okay.
going to pop. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And
So
have we
yeah.
done testing for, say, for example, OS Brick for 3.6 only? Has there been patches up for that? Because I haven't been following that recently.
Yeah. So right. So OS Brick is being tested. I guess I should go back and like review all these again just to double check, because depending on the order, the more recent ones are more thorough, and the earlier ones, it wasn't so clear. It was clear we had to drop Python 2, but it wasn't so obvious that the testing on 3 wasn't as thorough as we wanted. So I better review that. I'm pretty sure with Brick, it's definitely the unit and functional tests both have the 3.6 and 3.7 environments and are running in those.
Okay.
So yeah, so as I'll take a note to an action item to just verify that for everything. That's a good point. I should make sure that that's absolutely true. But as far as I'm aware, that is the case. So at least now the environment, if you just run Tox, depending on which project it is, and who did the change, you may only run like one of the unit tests, like maybe 3.6 or 3.7. I'm not sure which. Some of them you run both 3.6 and 3.7 because I feel kind of strongly that we should do both, and it's not that big a deal. But yeah. So anyway, so be aware if you run it locally, we have it set up so that it will skip. I'm pretty sure it'll skip if it can't find the Python version it's supposed to. So when you see your unit test passing, make sure that the actual test ran and it wasn't just couldn't find the interpreter, but we're skipping. So we have the skip in there to make it easier for developers, because if we have 6 and 7 and you only have 7, we don't want to like blow you up. But in the gate anyway. So to be clear, the Tox INI, you can run it if you've got Python 2.7. You can run it because Tox will respect that. If you do -e pi 2.7, it'll just run the basic test environment, which is our unit tests in 2.7, or you can do that with 2.8. With the functional tests, there are environments defined for functional 3.6 and functional 3.7. So depending on what you need to do, you can do it locally. But in the gate, we should be running everything. And let me put an action item on this as I'm doing this.
So I'm looking at Cinder train requirements text, and OS Brick is just listed as greater than or equal to 2.2.0. There's no upper limit on that. And it looks like pretty much a lot of other things as well. Oslo VMware for one.
Right. So, and you're looking in the requirements.txt?
Yes.
Okay.
On stable train.
Right. Oh. Well,
Yeah.
actually, right. But when you install under stable train, it'll use the upper constraints is actually pinned to the train version of upper constraints. So it'll only take the upper constraints from the train branch. So it should constrain train to be using versions that are supported under both.
Do you mean specifically in the upper constraints file, which doesn't exist in Cinder, or just
no? If you look
specified?
in right, so if you look in the Tox INI, way up in the top, probably in the just the basic test env, there'll be a -c, and the URL in there should have the word train in it. So it should be to the requirements repo, but the train branch of the upper constraints.
Okay.
So that's what will constrain it in the branch, and then that gets
and just
updated.
for our testing, but there's nothing in there to constrain it for deployments, though, right?
Right.
So how are we going to deal with people that are deploying based upon the requirements file? If we're going
Well,
to break deployments, if we're upgrading, say for example, we update OS Brick to 3.0 and it's Python 3 only, and then someone just happens to do pip up, you
right.
know, install update, then now they've just nuked their install.
Yeah, I mean, I'd hope that they know to use upper constraints, but I don't know. That's a good point. I'm not exactly sure how that's being communicated out.
The only upper constraints that exist is what's in toxini, and
Right. And that's not
no deployment
necessarily.
uses that. That's just for unit tests and stuff, right? So
But I know that from OpenStack Ansible, from the Collar images and from the Loki build, they all use the upper constraints from the requirements repository.
okay, well,
Yeah, you'd hope they
that's
would,
good
because that's,
for us.
yeah, that's what they're for. Yeah, so as far as like when you're dealing with customers and you want them to upgrade, you'll have to be aware, right? If you upgrade like Brick to the out of master, we're not testing it on Pi 2 anymore. So I know sometimes people want deployments to use the latest thing to get a bug fix. We'll just have to be, everyone has to just be a little more careful about that for the next few cycles.
Yeah, we just had someone complaining about not being able to backport a bug fix and passing CI because CI was failing because now they're running in Python 3. So pretty much everything now, from now on, any backported bug fix, there's going to be no way for CI to ever pass, which
Yeah, I
that
thought with
just
the
blows me away.
I thought on the stable branches they were supposed to still be running that stuff in Python 2. But you know, I think some of it's as people come across problems, because I imagine Infra doesn't want to maintain too many images, to run stuff on. But
Well, they never have, for the most
yeah,
part. They've never even branched their code base to say, okay, here's Mitaka or Newton or whatever. But in this case, the other projects are going to have to backport their fixes too, and how are they going to qualify?
yeah, right.
It seems like a big problem.
No, I agree. Okay,
Yeah, the upper constraints pin Cinder at 2.10, it looks like.
okay,
I mean, OS Brick, sorry.
okay. Yeah, and that should be pretty stable. And I think the upper constraints do get modified if we have a new release from stable train. The upper constraints will get modified to allow that, I believe. So if somebody installs, they should get the correct stuff. Yeah. Okay. So that's basically it. So the summary is there may be some weird breakage and we may have to make some changes. I mean, OpenStack in general may have to make some gate changes in order for us to be able to backport stuff to the stable branches and actually merge it, because we don't want to drop the tests. But as far as master goes, we're all set. So we've at least met the community goal, and we may possibly exceed it. Okay. Any general observations or questions about the transition to?
Yes, I have more. I'll let
Okay.
someone else speak if they want to first. So we've talked about this a little bit in IRC, but with respect to doing reviews for us core reviewers on what we are going to allow keep in or ask people to remove, I have a patch up against the Fiber Channel zone manager that strips out all 6 entirely. But I think that which is good in the respect that we're getting rid of backwards compatibility, but it's bad in that it's getting rid of backwards compatibility, because if we have a bug fix to push in there, cherry picking against the releases that still have Python 2 support means we have to put that stuff back in for that cherry pick. And so what do we do as a team, or is there some kind of community consensus on this, on whether we force projects to strip out 6 usage now, or do we wait another release, or what do we do?
Yeah, so we discussed this a little bit. So this is on the, maybe we should hold off. I want to make sure we discuss the volume local cache business, because that's going to be a big deal. So I had this at line 63. It's under the topic of using 6. So let's discuss it a little bit later.
Okay, that's fine. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, so it's definitely on there. Yeah, I put that on after I saw your conversation. Now you see the other day.
Oh, there it is. I see it.
Okay.
Sorry, Brian. Go for it.
That's okay. Let me do that. Okay. All right. So let's move along to the volume local cache spec. So this is Liang. There's a link on the Etherpad if you want to open up the review. And I guess, so there were some questions about how we should do this and the extent of the change, and because it's going to entail changes in Nova and in Cinder and in OS Brick. So that's sort of the setup. Now, I guess since I'm sort of running this, I can push my thing. So I left a comment at the bottom of that spec. I don't know if you've seen it yet, Liang. Let me open this up in a window.
So what's the overall idea of the spec? Are we caching backend volumes locally on an SSD?
Okay. So that's, yeah.
Should I introduce this one?
I'm sorry?
Should I introduce this idea?
Sure. Since it's your spec, go right ahead. Thank you.
This volume local cache, means when in the computer node, latency of the remote volume is very large. For example, if it is the RBD volume, and the latency would be at millisecond level. But some and even and what's more, persistent memory is getting popular now, and the latency with about hundreds of nanosecond. So these fast device to mount at the computer node and act remote volume, then the latency would be reduced very much. So this is the basic idea. So with this spec a lot of round and many input, and try to
Is this audio breaking up for you?
Yeah, I think, Lang, we're losing your audio.
property in the volume type.
Okay.
This can be cached. So this is responsibility to schedule this volume, to schedule this virtual machine to a server that has the cache capability. Then if the cache capability, then this volume will be cached. And if computer node don't have the cache capability, then just ignore it and go ahead with the volume startup and go ahead with the volume attachment.
Okay, so the basic setup we've got now is that so one thing is not all the backends can use this particular kind of cache. So it's the OpenCAS cache, which has the nice property that it doesn't require any kind of weird formatting or anything on the target volume. It's just transparent as far as, so the volumes are the same and can be attached to normal VMs or to VMs that have the cache. So that's good. So we've got the problem that Ceph can't use this because it attaches differently to the VMs, and we also don't want to allow it for multi-attach because we can get to weird conditions about data consistency. So as far as Cinder's concerned, we'll allow operators to define a cacheable volume type, and then users can select that. And then as far as where it lands when you go to build a hypervisor, we're going to leave that up to Nova. So I think probably the easiest thing for them to do on the first implementation of this would just be you define a flavor that has the cache, and then leave it up to the end user who has a cacheable volume type and wants to use the cache, and then they can just do it. But it can be booted on anything. So one of the previous proposals was that you would only be able to attach a cacheable volume to a hypervisor that had the cache, and we're going to eliminate that. And then the other thing was there's some complexities about the cache modes. So you can have various modes of caching that give you various, desirable properties depending on exactly what you want to do. And some of them can guarantee data integrity of the back end, and others, if you get disconnected, you'll have data loss because you don't acknowledge the rights immediately. So we're going to leave, we're not going to worry about that on the Cinder side. That'll be up to the operators to somehow communicate to their customers what kind of caching mode is available and to let them choose that. So again, they could do it with flavors or, however they want to do it. And then the final thing is Brick needs to know what to attach to. And I think what we're going to do now, there was a proposal that we would pass a map of the cache modes and which cache instances supported those modes. But instead of doing that, since Nova's the way you're going to decide what cache you're going to use, we'll let Nova just tell Brick, here's the cache. And then Brick can verify that it's a cacheable volume and then go ahead and attach it that way. But then all Brick needs to get is the cache instance from Nova, and then that's it. So I think, is that basically it, Young? And then it moves some of the complexity over to Nova, but I think that makes sense because I think a volume can be cacheable or not, but I think as far as like the mode and whether you actually have a cache and stuff, that's all way beyond Cinder's control. And I think if we try to put that, what it was looking like on the spec, if we try to put all that information on the Cinder side, you're going to wind up having different volume types for every cache mode. It starts to get to be kind of crazy as far as maintaining consistency, because you got to define all this stuff in Cinder, but you also have to define it over in Nova. And if you make changes over there and don't propagate them back, who knows what's going to happen. So I think this is simpler, certainly simpler on the Cinder side. And at least on the Nova side, I mean, I think for the first go round, you could make it so that, you just get the cache instance out of a config file or something. It's going to be up to Nova how they want to pass that to Brick. But I think it makes things simpler and it's conceptually better for users because we're not going to have this problem. The problem I was seeing was that with the scheduling, if you're scheduling based on cache type and cacheable and all these things, you're going to have a lot of failures and it's not going to be obvious to the user what's happening. So this way, an end user explicitly decides, hey, I want a cacheable volume. And then when you go to attach it to something, you can decide, do I want to pay the extra to get the cache, or do I want to just attach it to a regular VM? And the nice thing about the OpenCAS is it supports both. So I think that's good. And I better shut up because this isn't my spec anyway. All right.
So OpenCAS has to be installed and running on the compute host.
Yep.
And
configure.
Yes.
And sure, and configured. And I'm assuming this only supports iSCSI?
No, it supports any kind of device that gets. It's basically a device mapper, like multipath.
Yeah.
You just need to mount it on top of a device, so it can support iSCSI fiber channel.
So it's a block device cache effectively then.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. So I'm assuming that it could kind of sort of act like the way we define multipath being enabled or not from the Cinder, the NovaConf perspective, right? Because Cinder has to know when you do an attachment whether it's enabled to do multipath. And I'm assuming that we would have to have some flag that gets passed from OSBrick back to Cinder at attachment time to know that, okay, OpenCAS is installed and configured and running there, so we can do a cache attach, right? And then Nova will do all the work of actually handling the cache mounting through OpenCAS, and I'm assuming that there would be some change to OSBrick to do whatever's needed in terms of OCF, OpenCAS framework, to do the attachment, and also some magic to point it to the correct actual volume on the real back end, right? Not knowing how any of this works, I'm just kind of guessing.
Yeah, part of it, it's still to be decided. Last time I read the spec, because we started to see that there are a number of potential issues depending on the cache that you select. For example, a snapshot, you could not be sure that the data has been written, even if you QS, because the cache, that's its own thing. You could have issues with migration, live migration of volumes, because libvirt, the QEMU could expect like the data to be written in the where the VM is running, but if it has cache, maybe it is not written, it switch over to the other end, and yeah. So we have to find ways to ensure that at least we don't break everything, because the user don't know about this kind of feature. So we can either disable it based on what you're saying, like Novatel Cinder, how it is attaching the volume with a cache, for example, and the type of cache it is using. So if there is a request to do a retype or a migrate, and the cache is of that type, we fail. We say, nope, we cannot do live migration of the volume because it has this kind of cache enabled. Because we have to, I think we have to prevent us from breaking things. Because
so you're not
otherwise,
be able to live migrate a VM that has a cached volume. Is that what you're saying?
Depends on the type or the mode, the cache mode. There are cache mode that are fine, and cache mode that, because there are cache mode that when you request a write, it does it instantly, so it's fine. It mostly caching reads, but there are other types that are cache, read, and write. So if you cache the write and you don't follow the QS, sync, anything, because you're doing your own thing, the cache does its own thing, there are a lot of operations that rely on that, so that we cannot do safely. One of them is live migration. So if you're only using the cache for read, you can do live migration just fine, because your writes are actually going to the backend when you say them to go. In that, we do live migration with that mode of cache. But if the cache mode is also to cache writes, you cannot safely do a live migration.
So I was looking at the architecture here for OCF, and it looks like everything goes through the cache, reads and writes. Unless I'm misreading this, I don't think there's a way
probably the writes. The thing is whether the writes are synchronous or asynchronous. Like you request the write and it gets cache, and the cache writes it at a later time based on its scheduling, or it does it immediately, depending on the mode. I think in the spec, there is a section that explains it it's pretty nice. I think it's model modes. Where are the modes?
It's line 60 in the. Here's the
Yep.
link.
Yeah. So right through, for example, the first one would be fine.
Well, maybe we can limit it. Say we only support, because I think it's kind of bad to not allow someone to live migrate a VM because they attach the volume.
Yeah, but depending on the workload, they might consider that acceptable. For example, they are running a data-intensive operation and they want it to be ultra efficient. I don't know, whatever, and they say, okay, I don't mind if I cannot live migrate as long as when it's running, it's faster.
Has any of this been passed through the Nova guys at all?
There is a Nova spec as well, but I haven't read the Nova spec.
Okay. My feeling is that this is really similar to how we had to get multi-attach and multi-pathing done, in the respect that Nova's going to want Cinder to get this in first, and Cinder's going to want Nova to get this in first, because they're really dependent on each other, and we're going to need to get everybody to buy off on the whole entire thing in order for us to get this in at all.
Yeah, they were very clear on that aspect that they will not plus do their spec until we do.
Okay. So I have another question. How big is the cache in respect to the volume size? Is it the same size as the volume?
Oh, no. The cache is shareable. So for example, when we mount 1 TB SSD on the computer node, then it means the whole 1 TB capacity will be shared by all the volumes set marked as cacheable and attached on this computer node. And also, if we mount more than one SSD, fast SSD on the computer node, then all these fast SSD can all be shared by the volumes. It is assured.
So the cache SSD is shared by all of the backend volumes that are going through the cache? Right. So if I have a 5 terabyte volumes attached, they all use a 1 terabyte cache?
Yeah. So the cache don't need to be the same size as the volume, because if the cache can be bigger, then it means it's the cache hit will be high, and the performance will be good. But if the cache is small, then it means a lot of the cache miss, and the performance is not good.
So I guess we need to figure out what the limitations of OCF actually are, and can this work with a multi-path volume on the back end? I guess if it's using a device map or a device as the back end, then it should be all right.
Yeah, we just need to use the device mapper, like you say, instead of the individual devices. You do it.
Yeah, if multipath is enabled, then OSBrick should return the empath device.
Exactly.
So as far as so does OSBrick need to know the cache mode or do we want to just rely on Nova to know what the mode is and whether it's a good idea to live migrate or not based on that?
Well, for OS break,
Well, I
it doesn't
assume,
matter.
Okay.
yeah.
We
Nova
just get the,
tells me use this cache, this
and we
mode,
do it.
whatever, we do it. OS break is fine. It's the higher level operations that we must be
Right.
careful, like the live migration and stuff like that, because we don't want to have a terrible user experience.
Right.
We don't want, one, that everything breaks and their data corrupts. That is the worst case. But we also don't want them to not know why things are not working.
Right.
Why cannot attach this volume to this VM? Oh, because the volume says that, because you're saying that it's need to be cached, and that node doesn't have a cache system. Things like that. Or why I cannot live migrate. That we have in Cinder user messages, so that
Right.
one should be fine. If we do like Walter was saying, in Nova tells Cinder that it's going to do the attach using a cache and the kind of cache it uses, we should be fine, because we should be able to tell the user, yep, we cannot retype with migration or migrate because of this.
So
Okay.
there's a couple things there. One is if OCF is configured and enabled, that flag should get sent back to Cinder at attach time, initialized connection time, right? And then the driver can decide if it wants to try and do a cached
Only if
attach.
the user is doing the
Lose Gorka.
non-cache.
Oh, he's back.
I don't know if my voice went away.
Yeah.
Yeah, it froze for a minute. Could you repeat what you were saying?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Same host could have VMs that are using the cache and some that are not using. So it should be passed whether it's that specific volume attach is going to use it or not.
So what does the user in Horizon do to say, hey, I want a cached volume at attach time?
I assume that could be a flavor in Nova or something like that, because Cinder doesn't know. Cinder only knows if a volume can be cached. It's cacheable, okay, that's fine. But we don't, even a cacheable volume may be attached to a node without cache. We don't care.
Okay. So Cinder really doesn't care, and we don't need to keep track of this. And if that's the case,
We
then...
would need for the migrate and retype part of it, because we must prevent a volume that is using a cache that caches the writes. We want to prevent that from doing the live migration. So we need to know if it's safe or not.
Or even a retype?
No, a retype with migration. Sorry, the
okay.
retype that actually changes the backend. Those.
Yeah.
So, one comment from my side. So, in the past, we got block device driver in Cinder, and we decided to remove it because it was not like any other Cinder driver with a lot of limitations, like migrations, especially live migrations. And so, now speaking about volume local cache, it sounds to me like it's a very similar situation when we introduce one feature and we've got a lot of limitation for such volumes, like we cannot do multi-attach, we cannot do live migration, and so on. It doesn't look like a Cinder native or cloud native feature.
Yeah,
Well,
that's why I was kind of raising the question of getting Nova on board with this, because I would be surprised if they allowed a new feature to get in that basically disables live migration in a certain case. And
Yeah, but
because
it would
live
depend
migration
on
is
the
really
deployer.
important.
On the deployer, if the deployer selects, sets up all the nodes with cache mode that actually allow live migration, everything is fine. So
Yeah,
it
so
is just
maybe that's a startup time check that Nova does. If they configure the cache in such a way that they know they can't do live migration, then they just fail there before we allow it to even Nova to stand up. I don't know. I guess that's for the Nova team to decide, but
yeah, but that could probably be in OSBreak because that could be part of. We would need to add some way to actually check that because right now the spec was trying to simplify things and say, okay, we don't configure the cache modes. Those are configured outside. So if they are configured outside, you just receive an ID. Use this cache ID to use it, and you don't know what that is. You don't know the mode.
right, and that's kind of
So
scary.
yeah,
The cache model is bound to the cache instance ID. So OS Breaker in fact can know the cache mode at the time of attachment, but even OS Breaker don't learn the for example the rollback cache, but after that the operator can also can modify the cache mode later. So at that time, Cinder or OS Breaker cannot control that.
but maybe to get the spec actually in and to avoid all, well, not to avoid, to start with a simpler case, we can just add to OSBreak the possibility to check the mode and only allow the modes that we know that are safe. That way, the initial implementation is simpler. We support cache. We start fixing whatever we break because we will break something. And once the modes that support all the features in Cinder and Nova is in, we can look into allowing the other modes, which are trickier. Would that be acceptable?
Except I think Lang just said that
Yeah,
you can change the mode dynamically on the cache.
Yeah, but if the operator wants to break their system, good luck.
Can't
we
stop
just,
them, right?
yeah, we just are. We just specify on. We just check it when you're attaching a volume, and if they want, we document. Please never change it, or you will break things. And because otherwise, if we keep there, are like Walter and Ivan were saying, it's going to be harder to get it in if we are disabling live migration and things like that. And that can be a second discussion. Like first we have cache, then we see if we can work with Nova to add the weird modes.
I think you will have a lot better chance of getting this stuff accepted by Nova if we don't break Nova.
Yep.
I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, probably not just you.
You're talking crazy, man.
I know. Hey guys,
right,
I got to
so-
run to another meeting for a little bit, and I'll be back.
All right, thanks, Walter.
So, Liam,
Thanks, Walt.
Yeah, go ahead, Gorka.
No, I was going to ask the same thing, I guess. If it's
Okay.
okay with him if it's acceptable from his perspective and his PM's perspective that the feature is limited at this point in time and only supports the safe modes.
How does that sound to you, Lang?
Oh yeah, I think it is good. So so at the current phase, we just alone safe mode and prevent us rollback mode, right?
Yeah, so we'll check at attach time, and if it's safe, we
Oh,
allow it. And then, right, if operators go behind our backs and change it after it's attached, we can't do anything, but we'll document
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Okay.
and by the way, will it work with NFS?
I'm sorry,
Because
Yvonne, could
we
you
talked.
say that again?
No, no, it will not
Will it
work
work
with
with
NFS.
NFS?
Oh,
No,
okay.
Okay,
it will
so
only
no Ceph,
work
no
with
NFS, only ICKs and other block storage, like
and
fiber
fiber
channel.
channel. Yeah, anything that gets a real block device on the system will work. But that's why we will have the cacheable attribute reported by the drivers. So they can say, I know that in OpenStack I'm not cacheable. That could be RBD, that could be remote FS drivers. All those would say, I'm not cacheable, and that should be fine.
That's one more point why I don't like this feature, because it has a lot of limitations and not every
Yeah,
driver can support it.
but we've had those kind of limitations forever with non-block
Yes,
devices.
I
So
know,
we
but
work around that in almost every feature.
I know about this, but I don't want to have more workarounds and more limitations. Anyway, I won't block this spec with -2, but I will not put
Okay.
+2 for
Right.
sure.
That's sure. That's understandable. Yeah, I mean it's one of these things where it seems like for the applications that want it, it's a good feature, but it's not a general feature. And I mean that if Ceph is in fact the most popular storage backend now, and it can't use this, then it's I don't know.
Yeah, but at the time, Ceph couldn't even do encryption, and that wasn't
Yeah.
a blocker for the encryption feature ever.
Okay. Yeah. So we have to move forward incrementally. Okay. So yeah, you've got enough to go on to update the spec, and then all right, that sounds good. So the rest of the team can take an action item to look over the spec and comment on it. Okay. Any other comments, concerns, general observations? Okay. Thanks, everyone. All right. Okay. Next topic is up to Jay. So the third-party CIs and what's going on with those. And Jay, you've frozen. Whoops.
Of course, I freeze when I'm
Oh.
trying to.
Yeah, can anyone hear Jay, or is it just me, or is he frozen?
Frozen for me as well.
It's
Okay.
not just you.
Okay. I guess let's wait a second and see if the network congestion resolves itself.
I see him moving now. I cannot hear him,
Can you
but
guys hear me?
yep.
Okay. Well, I could hear you for a second, but now I can't.
Okay, now you can. Okay. Well, I'll keep talking and see if you can keep hearing me.
Sounds good.
Okay. This is like explains why nobody. All right. So feel like I'm here, which makes me sad, but I'm not sure what else we keep our at least
Jay,
two more drivers that it looks like I need that should be unsupported. So, I don't know if anybody has additional thoughts here.
So Jay, I missed the whole introductory paragraph you just said. Up to the point where you said, does anybody have any thoughts about this?
All right, let me see if I can find my processor. Give me a second. Do you want to move on to the next discussion and then I'll catch up here?
All right, so I've been muted. Sorry about that. All right, let's move along to the next topic, then we'll try to jump back to Jay. Can everybody hear me, by the way? Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Blue Jeans is telling me I'm muted, but okay, this is weird.
I can hear
All
you.
right. Okay,
Oh,
moving. So here's the question. At the PTG, we discussed moving to Python 3 only, and that we have to do it, and that we might as well start making use of Python 3.6 plus language features that aren't available in Python 2, in the knowledge that that would make backports a little more difficult if they used, Py3 only language constructs. So Walt was asking in the Cinder channel specifically about the drivers and about using 6. So I guess, so let me back up for a second. There's a link on the Etherpad, I'll flap it in here, where we agreed on some recommendations, but it turns out they're a little more vague than is useful. And so the question is, can we be a little more precise here to help people out? Because my feeling is, right, if we're using, well, sorry, let me shut up and let's go look at the thing I linked to, which hopefully is the right, okay. So our actions here were to remind reviewers, we have to be checking the code coverage of test cases very carefully, so that new code has excellent coverage so that it will fail if there's a problem with Python 2 when it's backported to the stable branches. So we sort of agreed that we would enhance the testing. And then, right, we reminded committers that people are going to be asking for more tests. So, be patient about that. And then the other thing was we had agreed that new features can use Py3 language features. But bug fixes that are likely to backported, you should be conservative on, because you don't want to have to rewrite the whole patch and get everything re-reviewed in order to backport. And so that was basically it. And then Yvonne and Sean were really interested in starting to rip out 6. And so we were saying that's okay. Now, Walt was looking at, I think he was reviewing a driver patch that was using 6. And so he was wondering, all right, as a reviewer, do I allow this in, or should I, right, we're not supposed to we don't need to use 6 anymore in master. But if this thing's going to be backported, it makes sense to use 6. So what's our policy on 6, I guess, is what it comes down to. I mean, we didn't want to leave it around forever, but on the other hand, it is kind of useful in some situations.
Personally, I to understand all issues with backports because you may know I'm maintaining some old branches in our downstream product,
Hmm.
but if we decide to leave 6, it will not help us a lot because you know we also can have new Python 3 only syntax, and 6 will be needed only for backporting. And if you've got new syntax or some new Python library usage, Python
Hmm.
standard library features, which is not in 6 and which does not exist in Python 2, 6 is 6 doesn't help us. So I don't see any sense to keep it.
Okay. And then in terms of like the drivers, if driver maintainers want to continue to use it, are we okay with that?
I think we agreed to use 6 only in drivers, for example, to make backports easier. We
Mhm.
have to document it somewhere
Right.
for reviewers because if somebody not here, like Sean, for
Hmm.
example, probably such people will -1 on carriage for 6.
Right. So, okay. So let me start writing stuff down. So, um, I'll write some sentences and then people can criticize them. How's that? That might be the best way to do this. All right. Discretion. All right. So we will allow drivers to continue to use 6 at their discretion. So if they want to use 6 in new code, that's going to be okay, at least in this, at least in Ussuri. Is everybody cool with that? Okay. And then
I
as
don't
far
like
as,
6, but
oh,
I will accept any decision community will do.
okay. So the other option here, I guess, is not allow 6 be merged into master, but then allow it in patches that are backported. I don't know if that's, so that means that the backport patch is not really going to be a backport as much as a change that's associated with the change of master, I guess. Okay, here's an example. Somebody put a review on the, okay. Oh, okay. All right, so I'll put up a patch to remove 6 from the fiber channel zone manager. And the drivers that use that. It looks like it. So past the initial checks. All right. So I guess I'm sorry. I'm just looking at this thing. Looking at this particular, does everybody have a link to the we were talking about? Let me slap it in the chat. This is a good question. How do we feel about this review? I mean, this patch set. I mean, so this is a situation where, right, we're maintaining the base zone manager, and then what we do in that is going to trickle down into all the particular vendor drivers that depend on this. So it's not quite so easy that we can remove 6 from Cinder, but let drivers keep it if they want to. So I guess the one question is, should we merge this thing? And then the other thing is trying to figure out why it won't, why it's having trouble in the gate.
So can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we had the same discussion with the Oslo team, and they were planning to hold off on forcing removal of 6 until like maybe the next release cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that was the discussion there. I don't know if that 2 cents helps.
Right.
So from a library perspective, it's still going to be hanging around. Yeah,
I mean, I'm not being any help at all here because I just don't know.
I don't know that we need to force removal of it right now. And I think we should maybe readdress in the next release and then, see how many backport patches come in that it is an issue with. Because, part of it is, we forcing the discussion, I suppose, by removing it. But, we can also readdress after we see what kind of issue it's going to be. I think that's what at least they were doing with Oslo.
Right.
Kind of kicking the can down the road, but
Yeah. So then what will we do about this type of patch?
Don't merge it yet.
Right.
It seems like Yvonne and Sean are the ones that are most excited to remove the 6 support, which, we know Sean loves to remove code, so that's not surprising.
Right. So I suppose, I guess we could, so it seems like in this thing that impacts drivers, we should not remove 6, is what I'm hearing. But in other sections of Cinder that have no impact on drivers, it would be fine to get rid of it.
Yeah, I think
assuming there's such a thing. I guess like the REST API isn't going to impact the drivers. So if we got rid of 6 stuff in there, that would be okay.
Yeah, anything that's unlikely for us to backport, but I
Right.
don't know how many backports we've done on the mainstream code lately.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
think there's
Well,
been that many.
yeah. Every so often something comes up. And then we'll deal with it. But then that's us as the sort of core team. So I guess the main thing, I guess this goes back to your discussion about drivers that we're about to have, right? I mean, I think the driver maintainers, we don't want to make things more and more complicated than they have to be, because we like having the drivers, we like them being maintained. All right, so I think this gives us something to go after. So we'll allow the drivers to continue to do 6. We will not 6 from oh, okay, so we'll allow drivers to continue to use 6 at their discretion. We won't require it, but they can use it. We're not going to remove 6 from code that's going to impact the drivers. So classes they inherit from and stuff like that, we'll leave it there for now. And then we can remove 6 from code that's not going to impact drivers, as long as we keep in mind that backports might be problematic. And so the new code should have better test coverage so that we can catch problems if they show up when this stuff's backported to other branches. Does that sound reasonable and clear enough? I mean, the main thing was a request for, what for reviewers when they're looking at stuff, how should we consider things? So it seems reasonable.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. All right.
So it's okay. The question, Yvonne, I think, had a stronger feeling about getting rid of it. Do you have a strong disagreement, Yvonne?
I don't have a strong disagreement with you. If we decide to keep 6 and our documented plan is about, sounds reasonable for me, I'm okay with it.
Okay. So what do we do with Walt's patch, where he's a driver and he wants to get rid of it? Are we okay with that then?
Well, I'm thinking we should so you mean the patch that was linked here that we were looking at?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Is he speaking for Cisco and Brocade on this? Because it seems like he's removing it from the main fiber channel zone manager, and then that's trickling down into all these other drivers. So that's the objection I had, is that we're sort of forcing them to make this change.
Okay.
So I would say we should reject the patch. But
yeah, based on the definition we just put together, yes, we should.
Okay. All right. So Yvonne, can you remove the workflow from that one then? And let me I'll -2 it, and then we can.
You can just -2 it.
Oh, and that'll do it. Okay. I'm never quite sure. Okay.
Any -2 will block my workflow +1.
Okay. what I will do is trying to type and talk at the same time. All right, so in this today's summary, I'll try to write this up kind of clearly and put it on the wiki, send out a link to the mailing list, and then everyone can please look at that and we can make it more clear, and then adapt as necessary, I guess. And thanks to everyone during this difficult transition time, because I know, right, everybody we want to move ahead, but we also don't want to break the past. So there we go. Okay. Any other general observations or anything people want to say about that? So anyway, I'll put up, whatever I should make it a patch. Maybe I should propose it as a patch to our contributor docs or something. And then that way we can discuss. I think that might be better.
Yeah,
actually.
I was going to say that
Okay.
would be,
Let me do.
that way we have it documented somewhere as policy and people can't grumble about it.
Right. And then actually people are more likely to actually respond on the review than to look on the wiki. So, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let me give myself an action. Great. All right. Thanks. So I think that gets us to a good place there. All right. Jay, as long as things seem to be working, let's move back to the third-party CI situation and give us a rundown.
Yeah.
In there.
Sorry, I was having issues. I thought you guys were just ignoring me earlier when I was talking because nobody was acknowledging it. But it seems like for some reason we've moved to Microsoft Teams in Lenovo, which is great, but it seems like having it and BlueJeans open at the same time causes like death and destruction. I don't know. Anyway, hi everybody. So I'm the guy that's slowly killing Cinder, I feel like. I've put up a number of patches to remove drivers that are, have not responded to us when we've noted that their CI isn't working. I've got 2 more to push up, which will be for XIV and Flash system. Daytera has been in touch with me and said they're working on things, so I'm not pushing up a patch for them right now. And it's kind of following the same model. At least, I've been in touch with Julia, and Julia's approach has been, well, hey, if they're talking to us and indicating that they're trying to resolve their issues, good, and we'll keep an eye on it. If you hear nothing when you reach out to them, okay, we're going to remove the drivers. So that leaves me with like 6 more that I need to mark unsupported. Yeah. It's getting a little concerning.
Yeah, it's kind of a lot.
Yeah. But I mean, these are all ones that are in the 60. I think most of them are in the 60 plus days without reporting category. So 2 that are in the kind of what do we do here is the NEC driver is at 40 days since it last succeeded. Hasn't done anything in 28 days, so we could kind of hold off on that one. And also, I didn't ever get an answer on what's going on with the HPE driver. So it hasn't been successful in 46 days, but it did run 7 days ago. So those are 2 that are kind of in the not sure category.
Which one? You sort of broke up when you were saying what the second one was. So it was the NEC, and what was the other one?
HPE.
Oh, HPE. Okay. Oh, I didn't see that on the list, or am I looking in the wrong?
Okay. I didn't have it up there yet. That was one that I want to ask about. So the 3, let's see. Well, actually, so the left-hand driver has not been successful, like in 250 comments. And then the 2 3-par ones have not been successful in 46 days.
Jeez.
Yeah. So do we have anybody still with HPE to reach out to on those ones?
I do not.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah. So I guess the one question for me is, should I be? I guess I should be trying to follow up on this like much more enthusiastically. But yeah. All right.
I think in Shanghai we discussed the possibility of writing a document or something using the, I don't know, what was it called,
The
to
software
facilitate.
factory.
Yep, software factory to make things easier. I know Luigi actually wrote something or pasted a link at some point.
Right.
And I don't know if we should follow up that to see if making things easier on the CI side could encourage and make their lives easier. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed that there was a discussion on the infra channel, and they feel that they spend too much time supporting third-party drivers, third-party CI for Cinder.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, when we're at the point where it looks like we're kind of killing our own project,
right, that's bad.
I also have a different viewpoint than I used to because I've been trying to get one of my guys in Shanghai to get a DI for Ironic going for like 4 months, maybe 6 months now, and without much luck. So I appreciate the pain more than I used to.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so Luigi just posted a link in the chat.
A link that Brian should know because I think we had a discussion with some of the people from Software Factory, but it was like way before the shutdown, so the Christmas holidays. So
okay.
Yeah, I should be aware of this, and I am not, so I apologize. All right, let me. Well, it looks okay. I guess I'll follow up with you, Jay, offline. I need to get a better handle on like our maintainer list and just because if you're so for some of these drivers they're not only not reporting but like the people aren't responding either is what's happening.
Yeah, I mean we pinged a lot of these people with regards to the the move to using Pi 3.
Right.
And so some people responded, some didn't. I've gotten mixed responses from IBM. Some parts of the company want them in, some are saying let it go. So I've followed up with IBM thus far. I mean, what we could do is before I do another unsupported group of unsupported patches here, do another round of email to the maintainers that are listed in the wiki, and say, hey guys, we're culling the herd again here, and are you aware your driver isn't working? And see how many that we get back that say, hey, oops, I didn't realize this wasn't working, that kind of thing.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense to give them another shot because it is getting concerning how many drivers are disappearing.
Okay, so how about before, obviously the IBM ones, it looks like they're ready to be removed. I'll do that. And then I'll do a mailing list email, but then also specifically call out the maintainers of each of these that, explains
Okay.
where we're at and what's going on, and see what response we get.
Okay.
Okay. I think that sounds like a path forward. Then the other question, I don't remember if we came to agreement as to whether we want an upgrade check for the drivers that are being unsupported. If it's being unsupported, you get a message at startup time that tells you what's happened. Do we want to warn them before they get to that point? Or is it sufficient to just, throw an error at startup time?
I was thinking startup because startup time, and then we also announced it in the release notes. So I think that's probably sufficient. And because I think the other thing, as far as operators go, just seeing the noise on the mailing list about stuff being unsupported would make them aware that they should look into their vendors to make sure that they actually are supporting their product in upstream OpenStack. So I'm thinking, I guess anyway, okay, so let me just toss that out there. So I think that the note in the logs and in the release note is fine that a driver's marked unsupported. On the other hand, yeah, and I guess the other thing is because we don't know how many people are actually using upgrade checks. So at this point, there's probably not a lot of point in putting more stuff in there.
Okay.
So let's.
Yeah, that statement makes sense. So
okay.
At this point, I won't I won't add the upgrade checks.
Right.
And we'll leave them working as they are.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for keeping on top of this, Jay.
Yep, no problem. Sorry that it's not better news.
Yeah. Okay.
Did I miss bad news?
What's that?
Did I miss bad news?
Oh, just the usual discussion around third-party CI and what needs to be removed and not.
I see.
And Sean's kind of become of the opinion, hey, if CI isn't running, get rid of it, no questions asked. But I'm really getting worried at how many drivers I'm removing here. So.
Yeah, I was watching the Etherpad when I was in my other meeting, and I kind of wanted to ask, at what point do we stop removing drivers, because we're starting to remove a bunch, and
right.
Do we just leave them marked as unsupported and leave them at that? And when do we cross over and stop removing them, or do we just continue until we have LVM and stuff left?
That's a good question. I mean, the policy's been we mark unsupported in one cycle and remove in the next. But yeah, that's
the theory of this policy was put together when the whole idea was OpenStack has a lot of power to coerce people into doing this kind of work for us, which does not seem to be the case at this point. So I'm not sure that the strategy makes as much sense as it might have 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So let's take a minute to just think about that. I mean,
And what happened to HPE?
yeah.
I don't know. They're not reporting.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of with Eric on this respect, is that we don't have the same support globally in the community from vendors to support their drivers. They just don't seem to care anymore. Or they're too busy doing other things, or busy tracking down Kubernetes support, or who knows what they're doing. But yeah, I think at some point, if their CI seems to work, then hey, that's great. We continue on with that. But if they stop even trying to support their CI system like HP looks like they're doing, then maybe we just mark them as unsupported and leave them at that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess because
Then we get into the tricky situation of all the people who've been removed going, well, can we be added back in as unsupported? Which maybe we say that's fine.
If a vendor comes to us and says, hey, we want to be added back into Cinder and we want to be marked as unsupported, but they're still interested in being Cinder, then that kind of makes me go, well, if you're worried enough, then put your CI back up and then help support us too. I don't know. I mean, how many more are we looking to remove this release?
Well, there's been a bunch, man. How many have you removed, Jay? Maybe 8, at least. I'm thinking of the upgrade checks that I was just reviewing. It's like 8 or 10, which is a lot.
Well, not 8 or 10. It's like 5. But with the unsupporting, that's getting to be, a larger number of drivers. 5, so 7. It'll be 7 with the flash system NextIV in there.
I mean, we're kind of at the same point with the fiber channel zone manager drivers too, because we only have 2, and I kind of don't want to remove either of them for the same exact reasons, in that I'm kind of worried about the Cinder volume drivers too. So, I guess part of the reason why we had CI was to allow us to say, hey, vendor, go fix your driver when we start getting bugs filed against Cinder itself. What do we do in that respect? There's not a lot we can do if there's nobody to support.
Right.
Again, without the drivers, there's no Cinder. Right. So.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of those things where you don't want to aggressively remove stuff, but on the other hand, we don't want to send the wrong message that you can just sit in unsupported forever. Although, I mean, I guess the problem with removing stuff is that if an operator wants to use a driver because they happen to own a backend that's not supporting Cinder, then they're going to have to, right? You have to jump through a lot of hoops to go grab the driver from previous branch.
Yeah.
And bring it forward. I mean, I guess we could have unsupported and like seriously unsupported. Like put a like, don't even call us, right?
Yeah, or disabled.
Yeah.
Because I think currently with unsupported, there's a flag that you have to set in cinder.conf to enable that driver to work again.
Right. So yeah. So
right. You could.
So the operators are aware that there's a problem.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of sort of have this problem now to a different extent with the VMware driver because that's what we use here. And with the get volume stats being entirely removed, it kind of makes the driver unschedulable.
Okay.
Entirely. And so
right.
it's not the same exact thing, but I'm an operator that needs a driver working in a working state, and
right.
there's that whole discussion too. But I kind of think that it might be worth seriously looking at the policy of not removing unsupported drivers.
Yeah, I kind of agree there, because we're not really benefiting anybody by removing them.
No. And at some point, a vendor or deployer like me that has a deployment against a specific driver, if Cinder has removed that driver, then, well, that's the last release I'll ever upgrade to.
Yeah, and then that's bad in its own way, so.
All right, so if we, so this brings us back to Jay's question, do we need to revert all these removal patches now? If we're going to change our policy on this.
And you said there's like 5 to 6 or 7 of them, Jay?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me see if I can figure out which ones they are here. You'd think I would remember working on it.
Well, it seemed like a lot. I was just thinking just from the upgrade check patches.
And if we put those back in, we're going to have to change the upgrade checks too, right?
Yeah, we would just revert the upgrade checks out of there also. Right.
Okay.
Unless. I mean, I guess we. Well, that's so right. So then now we could revisit the upgrade check question. I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
Keep them in the upgrade check. Well.
Said, hey, we're.
Jay's breaking up for me.
Yeah, you're broken up again. We may have to give you a minute. Oops, there it goes. Well, I'm wondering whether. So we're sort of working in the background, hoping the software factory thing will make it easier for people to run third-party CIs. So maybe we can compromise now, keep unsupported drivers in a little bit longer as we're trying to get the CI easier for people, and then revisit this. If we have a magic CI option, then we can start to crack down on people again for not running one.
What's the software factory stuff?
There's a link on the Etherpad. So it's Luigi can say a little more. I don't know all that much about it, but RDO has this thing put together that gives you sort of a CI out of the box kind of thing. Luigi, how would you describe it?
Software factory is basically a distribution of Zool, Gerrit, and a few other components. Just like you have Fedora, or Ubuntu being Linux distributions or GNU Linux distributions. So, and the idea is that you just run the basic things and you have an environment with those components enabled.
Yeah, you
So
seem to be logged in
it's
twice.
kind of a turnkey way to set up a CI environment.
Yeah, basically. So at least you just install the package. You don't have to put together a whole bunch of separate things. You'd have it in one place.
Yeah, that's good.
So yeah, so theoretically it'll make it easier. There's a review linked on the I'll slap in the chat again.
Yeah, I see that. I went to it.
Okay. Yeah, so oops.
This also assumes, though, that a vendor's still trying to be involved.
Right. Right. But our idea is that if it's easy to do, then it's not going to be such a big deal to be involved. I guess. I don't know. You still have to run this someplace.
Yep.
So you need some infrastructure.
And you still need someone to ensure that it's passing, because if
Right.
it's not, then maybe you have to dig. I mean, so it's not a zero
Yeah.
TCO.
No, exactly. I mean, you still have to, right. Yeah, the idea is that it lowers the barrier to entry, but you still have to be sort of committed to caring about your product, which one would hope people are.
Yeah.
But okay.
So I know
All right,
for a fact that there's still a ton of people using the 3-par drivers out in the wild.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I know we as a team have been almost entirely vendor centric in our mindset and developer centric in our mindset towards Cinder and how we manage and maintain the components within it. But I think, being on the other side of the fence now, being as someone who's actually using this, and this kind of makes me think like we need to be careful with deployers and who's deployed Cinder and who's using it, but is the silent majority out here going, well, Cinder's been great or whatever, but they haven't had enough time to actually do work upstream or get involved in Cinder and the IRC channel itself, to make themselves known. But we would if, like, for example, you remove the VMware driver. That would be disastrous. Right. And then we would just stop doing anything upstream whatsoever in that case. So I think leaving the drivers in and marked as unsupported is a bit of a compromise there.
Yeah, I agree that can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my computer is being a piece of crap today. What's up? And in fact, my phone I had to connect over LTE. So anyway, so yeah, I think maybe we're at the point where we do some compromise. Like I said, the Ironic team has been a little more willing to compromise on CI because they're having the same issues. Do we have any issue from a larger OpenStack, statement, support statement with this, or is it up to us to decide?
I think it's pretty much up to us. Although I'm just saying that out of my butt without having any kind of official sanction, but I think it's pretty much up to us how we want to do this. I think, right, we're not bound to this in perpetuity, right? So I think maybe for U and T, we try to get a better handle on what's happening, and then maybe with improvements in Software Factory, it makes it, not friction free, but at least a lot easier to get your CI going. And I think the other thing we're hoping is that we're in the situation where when you talk to individual people who are maintaining the stuff, they're very helpful, right, and friendly, and willing to share, but they're all time constrained, so they're not really reaching out to other. But what am I trying to say is, if we got everybody using the same distribution of their CI, then it'll be a lot easier for people to get help and to propagate fixes. So I'm hoping this would increase stability. But I don't know. On the other hand, if people have something that's working, they do not want to change it until it's not working anymore. And then usually it's a freaking mess, like we've seen with the Pi 3 change.
I can't tell you how many times over the years I've heard someone say, well, if everyone used the same distribution, the same CI setup, it would just be easier. And
right.
No one has ever adhered to that whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering too, on as far as ease of maintaining a CI system, how frequently do we actually get benefit out of CIs reporting on every patch? We always had this idea that we would submit a patch and the CIs would tell us if something didn't work in the code, and it just almost never happens. So I'm wondering if it would be more reasonable for CI maintainers to just ask them to run, daily against head or something instead of against every patch revision, because it, requires a ton of horsepower to run. Some CIs can barely even keep up sometimes, and it doesn't seem to really provide us anything useful in doing that.
Yeah, I remember us talking about that even when John was still on the team working with us, and instead of doing this per patch. But I don't think we ever implemented that, right?
Because
we did.
We're all
discuss it in.
Used to it. Well, I was going to say we're all kind of used to it, but because we've been looking at this stuff for years. But if I imagine that for somebody new wandering into Cinder, submitting a patch, and then you just get bombarded with dozens of random failures, it seems totally crazy.
Yeah, and they seem to show up over the course of a week. You'll suddenly get a new update on your patch, and it's some CI reporting in that's failed, that you have no idea what the heck it's running for.
And the problem is the signal to noise ratio on that is so low that everyone effectively ignores the stuff because it's the only sane thing to really do.
Yeah, it's just a big thing you got to scroll past in order to get to the stuff you're really interested in.
Right. So
yeah,
it seems worth considering different models for that too.
Yeah.
The only time I really look at the results for a driver's CI is when it's a patch against that driver.
Right.
Yeah.
But this does not change the fact that we need commitments from the third-party CIs. So yeah, of course, they could save a bit of resources by just running it as a periodic job once a day. But still, if I understand correctly, the problem is setting up it or fixing it when it's totally broken, which usually means redeploying it.
Right.
So how about, we're out of time for discussion here today. What if we what if we stick with my plan to reach out to the ones that I'm currently planning to unsupport.
Okay.
Before our next meeting, I will take a look at the ones that I have removed and decide if there are any of those, because some of them, the vendors just simply said, yeah, we don't want to do this anymore. I think for those, if they have specifically said, no, we don't want to deal with this, then I think we should leave it that way. But maybe revert some of those removals to just unsupported, and then put some time in Vancouver when we're face to face to kind of try to talk this all out. And I think maybe even bringing Ironic in and having a cross project discussion, since they're struggling with same issues, to get their input might be the next, and I think we need to have some indication from vendors that they're still involved. And I don't know if it means that we need to hold off until we have a common third-party CI platform that they can run, or if it's, reducing the requirement to running once a day and reporting something. I think that's the next step to discuss, is how do we know that that vendor is still at least somehow involved.
Yeah.
But I'm personally getting to the point where I'm tired of talking about third-party CI, because it has been a point of discussion at every mid-cycle for 3 years now, 4 years now. And now it has just become my job as a way to kill the project, which seems
Death by Jay.
Yeah. And I'm at the point where I'm simply enforcing because, well, that was the laws we made, and it's like, do these laws make sense anymore? It's illegal to sleep without a shirt on here in Minnesota, but anybody's arresting me for it.
Jay, I don't know whether it's a camera angle, but that mug looks like it's about 3 quarts. All right.
So why can't we just change the policy right now to say we'll just mark them as unsupported and stop removing them unless they're so egregiously bad or unless they've asked to be removed?
Yeah. No,
So,
I'm thinking
that
we're going to make the policy for right now, but I think we need to, have a longer term discussion about what is the CI policy, because then the next step is, what do we do when people start coming back and going, well, you removed my driver, can I put it back in now?
Right. We'll tell them, go to Software Factory, and
well, and that's kind of the point I'm trying to get to, is I think we need to have something that's more push button to say, hey, we realize we've made a mistake here. Is Luigi actually working on getting something that's more push button in place, or what? I guess I missed the discussion there.
So he's been working on, well, I should let you talk, but I think my impression of what Luigi's doing is he's communicating back to us what's going on in RDO. So they have an interest in packaging CI systems so that people can consume them easily. And so his role is letting us know about that so that we can tell people. Then I guess the next step would be to try to figure out an easy way to connect that system up to Garrett. How difficult is that? I'm sort of handicapped here by not having done this, and I know I could do it just as for fun, but it's about as much fun as it sounds.
I think there's a callback that you initiate. Well, from the old Jenkins days, there's a callback into Garrett that you would make, and it would trigger the CI to get kicked off through the callback. I don't know if that's still the same case. Garrett,
I think
basically the CI connects. Basically, it's an SSH connection where it just gets the stream of events, and then it's got to pick out the events that are significant. So whatever it wants to actually trigger on, it just looks for that coming through. And then runs whatever test, and then just posts that back.
And that's partially documented already in the Software Factory documentation, and the patch that was posted before should give more details about that. So, for example, you can see here.
Okay, so part of the problem is we should review the Software Factory patch. And see what get possible there.
Okay.
So do we have a kind of an answer and a plan that gets us through? Well, so I'll send out my note to the mailing list.
Right.
Who responds? Do my analysis of what I've removed, and then, are we having a weekly meeting this week?
Yeah, tomorrow's.
Okay, I'm not sure if I'll get
Which is
everything
pretty fast. Yeah. Right.
So maybe next week we'll discuss this further.
All right. Yeah, I mean, so like Brocade pretty much announced they are not supporting, right? They have no interest in going to Python 3, and they're not supporting. So I think it makes sense that they're removed. But some of the other ones we'll hold off on a little bit and reconsider. Okay. Oh, and I see Luigi posted another link. Let me.
Unfortunately, I need to switch to another meeting.
Oh, and we're pretty much out of time. Well, thanks everyone. I'm gonna put together a quick survey later, so to get some feedback about how we did this, as far as being useful and whether it was enough time and stuff like that. But I probably won't have that until the meeting. Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow at the Cinder meeting. Thanks everyone for attending. I'm gonna shut off the recording, and talk to you soon. So keep on cindering.
Later, guys.
See you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
You choose.